The purpose of Wealth Talk is to educate, inform, and hopefully entertain you on the subject of building your wealth. WealthBuilders recommends you should always take independent financial, tax, or legal advice before making any decisions around your finances.
Welcome to episode 182 of Wealth Talk. My name's Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for WealthBuilders, and I'm joined by our founder, Mr. Kevin Whelan. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, Chris. Good to be with you again, as usual.
Yep. Feeling refreshed from your break?
Yeah, refreshed, recharged, ready to go. And look, every couple of months or so, I like to do something that just gets my own batteries recharged. And it's also a reward, isn't it, for doing good work. And I like to do that. So it can be golf, which I love, as you know. And I was in the Carolinas playing a little bit of golf. 72 degrees, much better than the terrible weather we've had here. But if it's either golf or nice food, nice wine, or even I love a bit of nature as well, whether it be Scotland or whether it be Scandinavia or whether it be American or whatever. And by the way, Super Bowl's been on as well, which was good fun. So yeah, lots of good things, Chris. I love sport too, and you and I both being mad football fans, aren't we, as well? So yeah, all of those things I love to do. But thanks for the question. And while Factor 50 is definitely something that's important to me, given my Celtic colouring, even in 70-degree heat, I don't look like I've been anywhere, but believe you me, I had a good time.
Yeah, we're back to it now. And I should just mention as well, we've got our next webinar coming up next week, which is on Tuesday, the 21st of February. And this is going to be a webinar all about SSAS pensions. It's how to fund your property portfolio using your pension. Any little teasers, Kevin, of what people might expect on that webinar?
Well, you know, the big thing for me with SSAS is it's leverage. And that's a big theme coming out of today's conversation. And it's the leverage of being able to transform something where for most people, pensions are on the do not disturb till 65 list, right? It's something that's there in the background. It's in a box, in a folder, in a file somewhere, but it's not part of their life. It's apart from their life for the most part. And in fact, Chris, as you know, I'm writing a book, working title, Pension Chaos, while the whole pension system in the UK is broken and what to do about it. And this is part of the problem. And what SSAS does, the small self-administered scheme, well known by good, avid listeners to the podcast, it allows you to turn your pension money into money you can use to build wealth for you today. You don't have to wait till you're 55 or 57 or 65. You can use it today. And property is a great one, but you can use it to help your business, buy a franchise. You can use it to buy funds, but as a wholesale customer instead of a retail customer. So you're paying a fraction of the price. I did a little post on the Facebook group the other day when somebody said, how cheaply can you get access to funds? I said, the platform we use is 0.15. And the biggest platform in the UK charges 0.45, 3 times more expensive, Chris. So there's so many more ways that SSAS can bring really great value. So I'd encourage anybody who has heard of it but doesn't really know about it, everything you wanted to know about SSAS but were afraid to ask, Tuesday the 21st, UK time, of course.
Yeah, that kicks off at 7:30 p.m. So go and register now. Head to wealthbuilders.co.uk/SSAS webinar. That's SSAS webinar, all one word. And we'll see you there. Okay, so today, Kevin, we are focusing on the property pillar, and we have a fantastic guest, Mark Fernihough, who's the founder and director of Prosper Property. And this is a family business. They were selling cars, and that's an industry, obviously, that's changed over the last few years. And they educated themselves in property, and they now have a thriving property business, which serves the tourist industry in their home county of Cornwall.
And not just the tourist industry, if I recall. I think in the winter months, they have a different strategy because there's less tourists, but, Cornwall, well, always people love Cornwall, don't they? So it's always going to be a great place. So great for them because they've got a fantastic location. But, the point being that it is possible to pivot and to change completely. And, in terms of their change, it was a complete change, wasn't it? Moving from cars to property as a whole family. And this is part of the benefit of being a creative-minded wealth builder. You can see changes. You're participating in changes. You're reacting to changes in a way that the kind of traditional pensions industries I talked about a moment ago, don't react to anything. Everything's about, don't worry, it'll all be okay in the long run. Stick with the same thing. Just hang on for the long term. Everything will be okay. And of course, as wealth builders, we need creativity, and creativity doesn't come from that place.
That's right. And there's a lot of leverage at play in today's conversation. So perhaps we'll leave the listeners with that and see how many they can pick out, and we'll run through that after this interview. So let's head over to today's conversation with Mark Fernihough. Mark, very warm welcome to Wealth Talk today. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you very much. Yeah, yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Thank you. It's a Friday, so spirits are high. Weekend is coming, but I'm looking forward to talking to you today, Mark, because you've got really, really interesting business, and one that I think will be of great interest to our listeners. And you were chatting with Kevin recently, weren't you? And Kevin kind of pulled me aside, and he said, "Oh, this guy's doing some amazing stuff. We've got to get him on the podcast."
Yeah. Well, thanks for the compliment. I was chatting to Kevin, and he's sort of learned over the last year or two quite a lot about our business. So it's nice for him and you to invite me, basically.
So, Mark, you're the founder and director of Prosper Property, and your tagline is interesting: protect and grow your wealth. So, couldn't be any more relevant, really, for today's conversation. I'll find out in a minute, what made you choose that tagline. But let's begin with just, if you don't mind, explaining a little bit about your business and what you do.
Yeah, so we basically acquire commercial property, specifically guest houses and small hotels, to refurbish. So we add value through refurbishment to start with, but then actually to drop our automated serviced accommodation business model into. And it's a strategy that we sort of have come across, which is obviously perfect for our location. And it's got two big upsides, I suppose, really. And that is the fact that it generates so much cash flow, run in the way that we do, and it's very lean. And then also, because these properties are generally run by Mr. and Mrs. Guesthouse owner and not really traded sort of purely commercially, they're almost sort of hobby jobs, lifestyle jobs. They're always valued on bricks and mortar. So we sort of season the income over a period of time, 2-3 years. And then after sort of 3 or 4 years, we can actually get these properties commercially revalued. So there's an uplift in value on them once that happens as well.
So some leverage is definitely coming into play, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I suppose just a lot of adding value through different sort of streams, I suppose, really.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'll look forward to finding out exactly how you're doing that. Let's come back to that tagline quickly. So protect and grow your wealth. What made you decide on that?
Well, I suppose from our perspective, we are investors ourselves, but also from sort of people that we work with who are investors. It's what we all want to do, isn't it? The wealth that we have, we want to protect, whether that's whatever that is, really. And the majority of it want to grow it as well. It's, simple as that, really.
Yeah, and maybe just you can add about how you go about protecting, funds, because you work with joint venture partners as well, don't you? You raise funds.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Well, I suppose the great thing is with property is that obviously it's a very secure asset, so to speak, whether that's whether you've got charges or not, just from the simple fact of the matter that it's a property, it's not going anywhere, it's not getting stolen, you have it insured. They are sort of historically very secure, safe assets, ultimately.
All right. So let's get into the strategy then. So you said, you're finding undervalued commercial properties, then you're turning them into highly profitable service accommodation businesses. So you mentioned location, but let our listeners know exactly where are you based?
So we're in Cornwall, and we have very specific target locations, and actually locations within target towns, really, down here in Cornwall. And obviously sort of Cornwall's a brand in itself in a way, really. So 4 million people a year come to Cornwall, and the cliffs and the beaches aren't going anywhere. So it's going to continue to grow without a doubt.
Okay. So we'll go back to kind of where it all began, but just to give people a perspective of, where is the company at now in terms of size?
So we have about 70 live units across multiple different properties, so mostly guest houses and hotels. The value of the properties that we own and manage is about 6.5 million. The majority of that are ours rather than managed, but we do manage properties for clients as well, who fully understand us and the business model. We only manage properties for people that get it and the properties are right and that they're on board with exactly what we do. We've grown that over the last 5 years, basically.
Okay, and as you mentioned, this is a high cash flow business. Yeah,
exactly that. It's one of the benefits is the fact that the majority of people that own these properties, because it's so busy down here in the summer, most owners just trade up to the VAT threshold and they're open for 4 months in the summer, and they can easily get to that figure, and they're happy with that because they're working in the business themselves, making breakfasts, washing linen, changing beds, cleaning rooms, and it is actually quite hard work. That's the most profitable part of the year, obviously. So they do that and are comfortable with their lot, so to speak. But actually run far more commercially. You can, in some of these buildings, you can triple that income if you're perfectly happy, obviously being VAT registered and having a team, and obviously sort of leveraging a team and outsourcing stuff. Then it can be run entirely different to a sort of lifestyle job or lifestyle business that most of them are.
Yeah. So obviously in Cornwall, you've got the tourists in the summer, right? Absolutely packed out. So how do you maintain full occupancy all year round, Mark?
Yeah, well, it is very, very seasonal. So our rates are completely different in the winter, off season to the summer. But it is surprising how many tourists actually do visit at off season as well. We're not by any means full in the winter, but we do also get contractors in the winter as well, because our rates are down sort of more like the rates that contractors are sort of comfortable with. So we have a mix of tourists and contractors through the winter, and get sort of reasonable occupancy through the winter. And it is profitable through the winter, but obviously the summer is really where you make the money, obviously.
Yeah. So for anyone listening now who's perhaps got service accommodation and they're really finding a struggle, when they've got a really busy period, then they're just completely quiet. Any tips there, as to how you went around, finding those contractors, or which sites perhaps you're using?
I suppose we just leverage as many of the online travel agents as possible. So we have our system set up so that we're on as many as possible. It's just a case of getting eyes on the rooms, really. And there's various other sort of strategies and sort of, tricks that you can sort of in a way do to get more eyeballs on your properties. And that's sort of, independent of each OTA, really. Each OTA has their little intricacies, etc. So that's something that we concentrate on. But we also concentrate on repeat business. So obviously we market to everyone that stays with us. So if we try and use the online travel agents like a dating agency. You hope you only have to use them once for a particular guest, and you want to obviously take their bookings direct once they've stayed with you. So then, obviously you're saving the commission then.
Okay. So would you mind, Mark, can you just maybe take an example of a project and walk us through, just give us the sort of quick overview of, how did you source it? How did you find it? How did you negotiate? What kind of revenue perhaps was that business doing, and what were you able to turn that into?
Yeah, sure. We source properties in different ways. So we have relationships with agents. We also sort of scrape. I say scrape, but obviously, scrape the portals as well for properties that are actually advertised, and my team do that for me to save me time. And then we also send letters out to owners of these guest houses and small hotels as well, so that we sort of go direct to them. And we've sourced them in all of those different ways, basically. But once we've acquired the property, well, actually, before acquiring the property, ultimately, we've got to agree a deal. And everyone's circumstances are always very, very different. So we've acquired properties on lease options. We've bought properties outright using investor funds. We again manage properties for the odd client as well. People that maybe had the property on the market, but it was on the market for a specific reason, and then we've sort of worked out that actually it suits them if they actually keep it, and we manage it for them because that actually solves their problem. So there's lots and lots of different things that we can do to just make sure that a deal works for everyone. Because ultimately, if it doesn't work for them or it doesn't work for us, then it's not going to happen. So it's just a case of asking lots of questions, finding out actually what people really what they want, what they need, and seeing if we can help, basically.
And I've seen obviously some of your pictures of the before and after, and it's quite a transformation. So you obviously have a good team who can go in and turn that around. How much kind of resource and investment do you put into your refurbishments?
Ultimately, it depends on what the property's like to start with. So some properties will go in there and literally gut them and replace all of the en-suites. Some properties, we're only adding extra rooms because actually the en-suites and the rooms that are there are nice. So we'll obviously, if we can save money or not spend money, we will. Obviously, it's just a case of getting them up to a certain standard. And in the specific, I suppose, layout or model that we need to run our business model in there. So, yeah. Okay.
And something I'm really interested in is the automation, the systems that you've created, Mark, and explain why this is so important, and give some examples of kind of the areas where you've really minimised the amount of kind of human resource and touch points.
Yeah, I suppose systemization and automation is key to our model. Ultimately, it's very lean, which saves us money. Simple as that. So everything is self-check-in and self-check-out. So all of our communication is electronic. So it's about sort of giving people the service that they want, but obviously doing it in as systemized and as automated a fashion as is physically possible. So yeah, self-check-in, self-check-out. We still have a phone system, so people can contact us. And that's, but again, that's very, very systemized as well with lots of different messages. And we've tweaked that over the years. Initially, a long time ago, we said we're not having a phone system. We're going to be completely electronic. But from a customer service perspective, we realized actually we do actually need to be contactable for certain things, because obviously it's a hospitality business. You want people to have a great service. And if something happens, if there is an issue, which there obviously is always going to be issues for whatever reason. If a light bulb's gone in their bedroom, for example, or something, they need to get hold of someone quickly. So being, I suppose, too remote is obviously a bad thing. So we found that balance now. We think we found the perfect balance, basically.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure it's not you that's jumping up and running to go and change the light bulbs these days, although maybe it was back in the beginning. So let's talk about the team now, Mark, because you've got two, co-directors, business partners. Yeah. And, how did the three of you work together?
It's myself and my dad and my brother, basically. My dad he's sort of more of an advisory role. He's retired. So my brother runs the whole sort of maintenance and operations side of the business. And he loves running around and actually doing jobs. So although he's the director, he actually is the Mr. Fix-It as well. And then we also have other people on the team that sort of help with all the sales and marketing, the systems and the operations side as well. So people that we've worked with for quite a few years who help us set all of that up. And then we've got a customer service team, which we employ, which are actually VAs abroad. And obviously we have systems in place to obviously communicate with them all day and every day. And they run off the back of our systems and processes. So they do all the customer service, basically. And then we've also got housekeeping team as well, which is all outsourced to a local company that we've worked with for years now. So they also work off the back of the software. So every day they know exactly what needs to be done in what property, because that's all in the software. And then obviously in the messaging systems through our project management, if the VAs need to get hold of housekeeping teams, they'll communicate through the project management software. So we think we're certainly pretty efficient, but there's always room for improvement, obviously.
Yeah. So leveraging systems, maybe you could share a couple of the software systems that you use that you find really helpful. It might be a good tip for our listeners.
Yeah, sure. Well, I suppose our entire business, as far as everything actually, it lives in project management software called Asana. I suppose there's loads of different bits of software out there, but it's something that we came across through a program that I did sort of many years ago. We invest a lot of time and energy into training and learning. And before we set the business up, I went through a program to learn how to systemize and outsource in this day and age, really. And it was actually that program that recommended lots and lots of different types of software for different things. So Asana is the main one. We use LastPass to share all the passwords, because obviously everything is online these days. And there's so many of us obviously logging into different things. So to obviously keep all the passwords secure, we use LastPass. They're two that we use at a very high level. I suppose they're the ones we use the most, basically.
Yeah, and we do as well, Mark. So I can definitely concur that those are great platforms, and both of them actually you can start using them for free. And try them out, and if they're working for your business, then you can upgrade. So good tips. And thank you.
Actually, combined with those actually is the whole Google suite, basically, which it's relatively normal these days for everyone to be I suppose using that sort of stuff. But we find Google far easier than Microsoft, although we have to use that as well for certain things.
Yeah, well, we should be thankful, shouldn't we, that we're in business in this day and age where these tools just make life so much easier and give us ultimately the time freedom that everyone is searching for, right? Yeah. And that's the kind of the test of a true business, right? Can it run without you, or is it completely dependent on you? So leveraging systems and people as you're doing is definitely the way to achieve that. Right. I want to touch on some numbers, and I know compliance is something that you're very focused on within the business, Mark. And, having raised funds previously, you've developed your own FCA compliant process, haven't you? Yeah.
So we've worked with sole investors to raise the equity to actually buy properties outright. And it was really important sort of before we did that to actually learn how to do it legally, ultimately. So we work with mentors, finance mentors, and sort of have worked with compliance mentors as well to put together a compliant process to actually meet, get to know, get to sort of go through the whole know, like, and trust process with investors in a way that is legal, ultimately, before then onboarding people and offering people investment, or showing people investment offerings, ultimately.
And because these commercial properties, people can use their pensions if they have a SAS as well.
Yeah, they can. It's they're all commercial from the word go. So I don't pretend to be a SAS expert, but I know obviously you guys are. Having a SAS is something that is on my radar, and we will be setting up a family SAS at some point in the next year or so. I know a little bit about it, and it will suit us as directors of businesses perfectly for us to actually invest in our own properties. But obviously other people, because they're commercial, can invest and can buy these properties with a SAS.
Yeah. So I guess looking at service accommodation and you're kind of taking it to a new level with the way that you're operating and systemizing it. But for listeners now, a lot of people have been hit recently. Those that perhaps buy to lets, and we know the mortgage rates have really eaten into a lot of people's profits, and they're looking now at other strategies that might return better cash flow for them. What are the kind of, give us some headline kind of numbers that a property doing service accommodation could generate per month or per year for someone?
It depends on if you're going to be managing it yourself or not, ultimately. So obviously, it's a lot of work, ultimately. And that's why most people choose to obviously have them managed by people like ourselves. But at a very high level, EBITDA is around about sort of 40 to 50%. Which is pretty good, very good, in fact. So, including the management fee for us, effectively, we can acquire a property, set it all up, obviously, drop our business model into it. And our earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortization will be 40 to 50% of that turnover. That's after all of our costs and everything. But obviously, if people want those properties managed, then obviously that does come down a bit, because obviously we charge a fee to do what we do ultimately. Yeah.
And obviously, room rate is going to be wildly different and dependent on location and all sorts of factors. But, again, just some numbers perhaps of a good room, high quality like yours are. What might that be generating?
Yeah, so in the summer, obviously every property is slightly different, and like you say, every location is very different. So we've got properties that are sort of more like, I suppose, a boutique hostel in a way, which aren't in sort of, which don't have sea views, and the rates for those sort of properties are generally around sort of 40 on the off season per night to 120 high season. But then there's other properties with, for example, sea views overlooking somewhere like St Ives. Then the rates there will vary from around about 70 in the off season up to about 300 in the high season per night. So a very broad range.
It
generally,
is. I think
three times as much in the summer as the winter, as far round figures go.
No, it's good to get an idea there. And as you say, this is a strategy that is time intensive and will require, a lot of input and the education which you touched on at the beginning, right? Switching from a property that perhaps could lend itself to being, changed into service accommodation. Just because it could doesn't mean that you necessarily know how to do it, right?
No, that's right. And I suppose, training is really, really important no matter what you're doing. We haven't always done this. I used to be in the motor trade. So we had my own car dealership. And in 2015, 16-ish, we realized that actually it wasn't going to sort of, I suppose, long-term provide us the security and the lifestyle that we wanted. So we made the conscious decision to pivot completely from one industry to another. Obviously, we had a tiny bit of property experience. I had a flat that I rented out. My dad had one HMO, one student house. So we invested a huge amount of time and resources into training. So, mentorship programs, training courses, mastermind programs. And that's how we managed to sort of transition from one industry to another with very little experience, basically. And then, we I suppose 2017 is when we closed the business, closed the garage, and sort of went full time into property.
Yeah, which would have meant obviously the pandemic hit during that period. How did you navigate that?
Obviously, it was tricky for a time. None of us had ever experienced something like that before. Obviously, being closed is obviously not remotely ideal for a business. We were very fortunate, in all fairness, that all of our businesses we pay rates on all of them because they're all commercial properties. So we had government support for every property. which actually we think was very generous. And then obviously once we opened, I suppose the properties burned between about £3,000 to £4,000 a month being closed, depending on how big they were, basically. 3 to 5, I suppose, the bigger ones. That's not ideal. But the moment that we opened up, there was so much pent-up demand from people to actually travel, because everyone's been stuck in the houses and no one could fly, that actually the summers, the seasons were bumper, really. So obviously COVID was a terrible time for lots of people for lots of different reasons. But from our perspective, I think we were just lucky that we're in the industry we're in and we got the support, and we were able to bounce back very quickly due to the just the situation, basically.
And finally, I guess looking forwards, what's your plan for the next few years? And in terms of supply in your area, do you feel there's more than enough properties that you can continue to enhance? Yeah, no, there definitely is. It's one of those, I suppose, industries in a way that a lot of people come in. They don't, a lot of these owners, Mr. and Mrs., they come in, they do it for 3, 4, 5 years. It's a semi-retirement sort of lifestyle move for a lot of people. So then obviously when they want to fully retire, these properties come on the market. So there's always a flow of them coming onto the market. That suits us down to the ground, obviously. So we generally acquire, or have historically acquired, one of these a year, but we're looking to scale that. We want to do 2 or 3 a year, and we're putting the sort of the systems and the processes and the team in place to be able to grow at that rate. So we've we're working as hard as we can towards systemizing everything so that we can acquire and set up and fund more of these, basically. Yeah, and as I said before, the properties look absolutely fantastic. So you're doing a really great job with your brother and father there. So if our listeners would like to take a look for themselves, Mark, go online, look at what you're doing, where's the best place for them to head to? Head to our website, and obviously there's loads of information on there. That is literally www.prosperproperty.co.uk. And there's loads of information there, and they can contact us direct through the website and set up a 30-minute video call with me if they've got any questions at all. That's brilliant. Thanks so much for being a great guest on Wealth Talk today, Mark. No problem at all. Thank you very much for having me. It's been brilliant. Awesome. Interesting stuff from Mark there, Kevin, and lots of lessons we can pull out. Before we do that, let's head on over to Trustpilot. And we've got a bit of catching up to do, actually. We've had some reviews coming in this year. I'm going to go back, actually, to January and to a review from Neil, which kicked things off, saying 2023 has started with a bang. Helen Pollock, the community support manager at WealthBuilders, has hit the ground running for me at the start of the year. I'm so grateful, and I'm looking forward to my wealth journey. Thanks, Helen.
Well, good for Helen. And, that's the leverage for us of new people. And we've got somebody else starting this week, actually next week, working with WealthBuilders, and somebody else in our IFA team. So, we're always taking the opportunity to grow by adding more quality people to our team who are playing full out on the team. And that's the sort of language we encourage people to think about, that they're just identifying with the team they want to play for, and they play full on. And like any team, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to do some things that are, it's like football, isn't it, Chris? You're going to make an odd wrong pass and make a mistake, and nobody blames anybody for that. But the leverage of doing that is great for us. And the leverage where Mark is, there's so many points of leverage there. Do you want to pick any out? As you said, you were going to test our listeners to see how many they could find.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you created an acronym which we use as part of our teachings, Kevin, for leverage, which is FIRST, which stands for financial leverage, intellectual, relationship, systems, and time. So I'm pretty sure all of those are coming into play here. And yeah. So, why don't we start with the financial leverage? And, you talked about working with others. So that financial leverage doesn't always need to come from your own money, does it? It could come from other people's money.
No, that's right. And of course, we'll be showing people next week about how the SSAS pension could be a form of leverage that most people don't realize is there. And while that wasn't part of the leverage for the Fernihough family, I assume it will be part of their leverage from the profits they're making as they shelter those profits from all of the main taxes, including national insurance, income tax, corporation tax, capital gains tax, and inheritance tax. So, pretty powerful stuff there in terms of financial leverage. But the leverage they've got is finding private investors. And what's impressed me with Mark is the diligence in which he's applied a thoughtful and legal process to this. He hasn't just gone gung-ho and posted things all over Facebook. He's taken good guidance. He's written some good materials. I've checked those materials as well. I'm impressed with the degree of diligence they've applied, because they want to keep themselves safe and they want to keep their investors safe. And in fact, you pulled that out straight away, Chris, didn't you, when they talked about the kind of the key words they use on their website.
Yes, protecting and growing their members or clients' wealth. So very key for them to protect.
Yeah.
Okay. So other points of leverage. Well, we know that leverage really comes from either systems or people. And absolutely, they have put the systems in place here with their service accommodation business. But also, Mark referred to leveraging, the VAs based in other countries to deliver the customer service. So really smart way of working here.
Yeah, well, of course, that gives you more time. I talked to Mark, and Mark historically was doing a lot of the work. Now he's not doing the work, so he can find more deals and negotiate more deals with other people. And I think they said their ambition was to move from one significant project a year to 3 or 4, and that's quadrupling the size of your business, which means putting all that leverage in place enables that to happen. So congratulations to them. And the other form of leverage, Chris, I might mention is they're not just finding their own private investors, they're also working with crowdfunding sites. So they've aligned on a current project. I mean, I'm not aware of the detail of the project, of course, but just I like the idea of what crowdfunding brings, and they're using Leo crowdfunding, and anybody could check out crowdfunding because it's a place you can invest. You can almost participate in other people's projects through the crowd. So, you could own a part of a project for £100 as opposed to getting involved in learning all of the project knowledge for yourself, and it can build a layer of diversification, whether you've got a SIP or whether you've got a SSAS or whether you just want to invest through your innovative ISA. You can do all of those things. So check them out on Leo crowdfunding. And of course, other crowdfunding sites are available. So check out crowdfunding as a way to diversify the way you are investing.
Yeah, technology really playing such an important part there, isn't it? You mentioned the website there, which is bringing people together. And Mark shared some of the tools that they're using as well. Some of those that we're using in WealthBuilders to make our life easier, to bring our team together, because we're working remotely now as well. So it's not so easy just to turn over your shoulder and speak to someone. But, tools now make it easy for people to work pretty much across the world and still be quite seamless in business.
Absolutely. I think the other leverage is when you get time back, and that's really quite a critical thing. And it's not one that Mark necessarily mentioned, but I'd like to mention it, that we encourage everybody who's on a wealth building journey with WealthBuilders to focus their way to income security. So they get financially secure, which means essentially all their bills are paid for. And that brings time back into play, because the great thief of wealth is time. We know that because people always say, I haven't got time, or I'm too busy. And the work-life balance for the most successful people in work and in business is always that. And you see that played out in the work-life balance problems. But part of that in business is creativity. So creativity comes from having more time to allow you to intelligently look at what the problems are, and then spend more time in creatively finding the solutions. Now, this particular one I've spoken about before, Chris, and I love what they're doing is really identifying that the lifestyle choice that many people make to run a B&B or a small hotel, they get to a certain point, I suppose, like they did in their car business, isn't it really? They get to a certain point when they're not really maximizing anymore. We all know that they'll often trade up to the VAT threshold to around 80 grand or so. And they don't want to go above that because they're quite comfortable. Well, Mark's talking about $250,000 for a property typically. So, yeah, you've got to just recognize that and say, well, there's a supply of people who get to a point in their life when they don't want to do it even at 80 grand a year. They don't want to do it anymore. And that's a real skill where you can give a solution to them, whether it's to manage the property, as you mentioned, or alternatively to buy it from them, which could be a shared deal, it could be an outright purchase, it could be a lease option. Do you know what I mean? That creativity then to spend time with people. And I jokingly, when I spoke to Mark, said, yeah, this is a really interesting strategy I call crusty people with crusty properties. You know, it's like they're getting to a point where things are not working as smoothly as effectively. There's no technology. It's all old fashioned. You know, there's no use of, I think he used the word OTA, which is online travel agent. But that's a form of leverage because you're using channels, as we call them, through Airbnb and other channels are available, of course, as well. And that brings more people. But you could hear him say, well, we want the channels to bring us the initial inquiry, and then we want to nurture the client to build further inquiries for the future. And I think all of this is very, very smart thinking, and I commend the Fernihough family for how smart they've been in turning this into a good business, and they're looking to expand. So check them out. I mean, it could well be something you could learn from in your area. It doesn't have to be Cornwall. It could be you could learn the lessons they're learning in terms of leverage, whether you're in Aberdeen or Aberystwyth, Cardiff or Cleethorpes. You know, you could do the same thing. Absolutely. And that tired business owner could be any type of business, right? Not just property. It's not just property. You know, yeah. And, I've got a client who's buying franchises from people who just getting too old to run them. You know, so you can look at age. Age affects people's thoughts. You know, their health, just the amount of energy they need. All of these things can affect someone's decision about whether they want to run a business. And you can solve a problem for a business owner or a property owner, not by taking it off them and almost taking advantage of people, but to give them a solution that they're looking for. In the same way as many landlords who are tired of their buy-to-let process, for example, many of our clients will take those properties under a rent-to-rent scheme and then turn them into an HMO or a student accommodation or a serviced accommodation or whatever it would be to get more leverage, to get more value. But it takes the problem away from somebody who doesn't want to face that problem anymore. And that's just smart thinking. Absolutely. Okay, so that covers off pretty much all of the lessons, I think, for today. And don't forget, if you'd like to join us for that SSAS webinar coming up on Tuesday, the 21st of February, then head to wealthbuilders.co.uk/SSAS webinar and find out how you can make your pension work harder for you. So, Kevin, we will catch up same time, same place next week. Indeed we will. And until then, my friend, see ya.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget that we are constantly updating our resources inside the WealthBuilders membership site to help you create, build and protect your wealth. Head over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership right now for free access. That's wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership.